Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journey, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2022. And that brings us to that title, which has been designated by Criterion at spine number 1110. This is the work from 1993, and the filmmaker is Jane Campion. And the name of the work is The Piano. This is the work from 1993, and it is written and directed by the great Jane Campion, and it stars among its really brilliant and splendid cast Holly Hunter and Harvey Keitel, Sam Neill, and Anna Paquin. This is, of course, that beautiful, haunting, emotional, full of feeling work, which is The Piano. I think if we were to speak about the piano and its plot and structure, that would bring us to the beautifully rendered and portrayed characters that form the tapestry of this emotional and rich work. Perhaps at the center, we could say, is that brilliantly portrayed and created character that is Ada. Of course, as played by the one, the only Holly Hunter. And Ada is a brilliant character, a fascinating character, so complex, so rich, so full of feeling and emotion and will. And that emotion and feeling and will is expressed through various modes of, say, self-expression and also self-evaluation, also a type of feeling or type of place within society, and also place within intimate relationships, and also place within the environments. And that multi-layering is one of the reasons why this film, The Piano, is as brilliant as it is, and then some. And so when we look at that, we can see the various ways in which Ada, the Holly Hunter character, is seemingly connecting with the world around her, the various intimate relationships that develop around her. For example, the relationship that she has with her daughter, Flora, the Anna Paquin character, or her husband, the Sam Neill character, Stuart, or the character played by Harvey Keitel, Baines, as well as other members of the society and community that we come to know and we come to witness and be a part of as the film progresses, in particular in this community in New Zealand during this particular time. So in this setup, or in these various character relationship dynamics, we can see a number of things going on in terms of the character of Ada. Again, this fascinating character. On the one hand, right, or one of the key aspects of her character that we understand from the get-go is that she chooses, or she has chosen from an early age on purpose, for certain reasons that we can interpret. She, Ada, has chosen to not speak. She has chosen to withdraw her voice, and so she doesn't communicate through the spoken word. Instead, she communicates through a number of, we can say, various forms or methods or means. One of which we could say is the intimately developed sign language that is part of the, or it's one of the main components of the relationship between her and the Anna Paquin character. And so this is a very important aspect of the film, because we see immediately the wonderful, almost complex, a balanced or counterbalanced dynamic, parent-child dynamic that is oftentimes flipped or reversed in a very playful way, and yet there is also this sense of warmth and togetherness and intimacy between mother and daughter. At the same time, there is also a sense of tension. There's also a sense of maybe not always being parallel to each other, but that's okay. That doesn't necessarily mean that one negates the other, or that there is automatically a feeling of antagonism between parent and child. But on the contrary, these are fully rendered human being characters that have their own sense of feelings and their own sense of wills, while at the same time having this bond or connection that is, of course, one of the key bonds in any type of emotional relationship or familial dynamic, that between a mother and her daughter. So is so much, and then that is, of course, given full voice, both directly and metaphorically, in the fact of their means of being able to communicate. And it is a very intimate source of communication, we understand, in terms of only they understanding what it is they are talking about. And so this becomes a really important bond that, again, highlights the characterizations of these two people, including, of course, Ada, Holly Hunter's character. So that's one aspect of communication. Another aspect of communication is her, say, use of or her own, say, physical being, the way she expresses herself, not through words, but say through her actions, and also through her various body gestures and the like. And so we see this play itself out in, for example, the way she interacts with various people in the society community that we meet in this period of time in New Zealand, and also in particular how she interacts with the husband character, Stuart. Sam Neill character as a type of frontiersman living lifestyle that seems to be trying to establish a sense of connection with the landed wealth or the possibility of a landed-based wealth, and also discovery and the frontier and the new life in the quote-unquote new world, as it were. But that brings with it, too, this idea of control and domination that is running counter to the feelings of desires and will and self-expression, i.e. Freedom and liberation. That is obviously very much at the centerpiece of the soul, the heart and soul of Ada. And so there is, therefore, that clash and that sense of the lack of, say, speech that is maybe purposefully withdrawn, and that could be a metaphor or a direct counter to the type of control that this relationship, that this marriage seems to be suggesting, especially as the film progresses. So there is that type of language or expression in terms of the physical, but also the withdrawal of communication via speech. But also the idea of a type of physical expression is also on play when we think about the relationship of Ada and that with Baines, the Harvey Keitel character. Harvey Keitel's character here has a type of comparison or contrast with the Stuart character. They are both men in this society. However, Harvey Keitel seems to have maybe a different type of background that we learn about a little bit as the film progresses, and his connections with the land, the connections with the earth, that might not necessarily be linked with a sense of a type of a purpose that is landed or finance based, but rather it seems to be very much inherently linked with nature and the environment, and thus the culture and the people, and that it brings about his connections with the Maori culture. And so therein lies, I think, a nice contrast, and the contrast is also further augmented or embellished, is it not, when we see the relationship develop between him and Ada. And herein lies also that great sense of expression. Again, we do this issue or this theme about her voice or not hearing her voice or speech, that does come into play also in the context of her relationship with Baines, but also there is the physical and the expression of the physical, and this is the idea too of sexuality. Human sexuality is also a very important and poignant and intimate form of communication between human beings or among human beings. And this is definitely the case with Ada. And there is nothing of shame. There is nothing of a type of a feeling of embarrassment. But on the contrary, there is this idea of expression via human sexuality, and how that seems to be either running against certain societal conventions or rules on the one hand, but also it might be seemingly, or perhaps not so seemingly, quite directly in fact, be linked so intimately with the means by which characters like Ada, and Baines for that matter, are willing to express themselves and not just satiate their desires, but really say to the other who they are, and thus maybe confirm or reconfirm to themselves individually who they are. So indeed, human sexuality becomes another mode or form of communication as the story progresses. And also that is linked, I think, really nicely in terms of another point of contrast when we think about the theme or relationship dynamics of control and dominance that might be suggested with other character relationships that Ada has with other male characters of the film, such as Stuart. So this is a very important part of the film as well. And yet another important part of the film that is indicative of a type of communicative mode of thought or line of thinking is, of course, the music and the piano, thus the title of the film, The Piano. This is a key component. It's a key metaphor. It's also a key aspect of Ada herself. It is like a musical heartbeat, if you will. And I'm speaking not just of the music that she plays, but also the music that is layered, Michael Nyman, that is layered onto the musical soundtrack of this film. This is, in many ways, a type of, as I indicated, a musical heartbeat. It is a musical heartbeat in the sense that it is in many ways, a type of expression of the living emotional will of Ada. It is also an expression of how she is communicating that living emotional will to people around her, such as her daughter, such as to Bain, such as to others, so, and such as to herself, and such as therefore to us. So therefore, her music, the piano music, becomes another voice of Ada, which is a brilliant aspect, especially when we understand how the piano itself becomes embedded directly into the storyline, how it becomes so important in terms of how the piano on the beach, stranded on the beach, becomes this image, haunting image that speaks volumes to the way in which her relationship with Stuart is rendered throughout the film. Also, her interactions with the piano vis-a-vis Flora, and the joy, the jubilant feeling of dance and music and energy and freedom, how that is very much part of their relationship. And also the idea of exploration and slow, say almost timid and almost frightening and scary, unknown journey that the piano also represents vis-a-vis her relationship with Baines. And so it becomes so important, the piano is, and it becomes important, as I say, as a theme, as a character in and of itself, as a metaphor, and also as a type of extension, or indeed an integral part of the character, the main character that is Ada. So it is... for these, in many ways, we have this wonderfully rendered film that is psychologically rich and complex, that has the emotional depth and bearing that really gives voice to these characters in a rich tapestry of multi-layered connections and emotional dynamics that is playing, of course, with the intimate, that is the intimate relationships between family or between couples, that is also based on emotional dominance or liberation, emotional and sexual on the one hand, and also against the context of society writ large. And we have therefore the notions of control, of fate, of who has control of one's fate. Is it the people around us, or is it us ourselves? And this is Ada's story, and Ada's complex challenges, I think, expressed so well in these various scenarios of her say, challenges or confrontations or interactions vis-a-vis the society around her. And that is true in terms of the direct character interactions. That's also true metaphorically when we see her interact with the soil, the mud, and the earth, and the woods, and the trees, and the color, and the mist, and the rain. And then that is laying the foundation for so many clashes and confrontations and dramatic, epic moments of poetry and beauty and tragedy, and also horror and fright, as well as the unknown. And what is the unknown? It is scary, but it is also liberating and full of freedom and feeling. And this is indeed, I think, wrapped up in so many of the visuals that we see here. The way that this is captured in terms of color and the feeling of water and elements and rain and mud. There's a way that this shines through. This is spoken about, I think, so well in many of the supplements. For example, the commentary track. Also, there is a great discussion with cinematographer Stuart Dryberg about some of the choices, the way in which blues and greens are used in particular. That really comes through in particular with this Criterion release, and I'll speak about that in the latter half of this video. And also how the portrayals of nature are also reminding us of the links with the culture and the earth and the land and the feelings and the spirits and the atmosphere that is also linked with New Zealand and also the Maori culture, and is also a part of the story and the background, and also the one of the beating hearts of the film. It's also a focus of a very fascinating supplement that's also included with this Criterion release, and we will get to that as well when we get to the supplements. And then finally, with these feelings, with these connections of the feelings and emotions and wills of the character, almost embedded or connected so directly through the visuals and the camera work with nature and with the environment, we have that wonderful foundational link that forms the basis of an interpretation of this work in the context of Gothic romance literature. And the idea, therefore, is how there is a haunting poetic aspect as rendered into these various environments or atmospheres that are themselves representative of a type of overpowering and a wonderfully poetic portrayal of human feeling on the epic level. And then so we have the haunting, the beautiful, the tragic, the mysterious, and the inexplicable and the unknown. And oftentimes we have things that are expressed, but then ultimately what is so beautifully, powerfully poetic about this is that there are things that are expressed, but there are also things that are so personal and so uniquely one's own that they are secrets that we share within our very hearts. And it is that wonderful paradox of humanity and the human condition, is it not? Things that we keep hidden, things that are truly, truly representative of who we are uniquely as individuals, also find in those beautiful, profound ways expressions through various means. And that is the great power of the work of cinema, that is The Piano by Jane Campion, the way in which she's able to express this paradox in the form and the character and the great human being that is Ada. Portrayed by Holly Hunter. All the paradoxes, all of the seemingly wonderful human contradictions of human existence, both external connections as well as the internal, that which is feeling and emotion internalized, perhaps so much so intensely, strongly and forcefully, such that the voice is withheld. And yet, even as the voice is withheld, so much is being said all at once. That is a remarkable achievement indeed. This is the work from Jane Campion, The Piano. This is the Criterion Collection release of this film, The Piano, again at spine number 1110. What I have here happens to be the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo. And I will speak about the particulars of the supplements as well that are included here. But first, let's speak about the transfer itself. Again, here is another example of the Criterion Collection's foray into the 4K UHD format, and also the Blu-ray as well. But in regards to the transfer, we understand based on the materials presented by Criterion, the piano is presented in its original aspect ratio of 1.85 to 1. And this is a new 4K digital transfer created in Dolby Vision HDR, 16-bit 4K resolution from the original 35mm negative. Let's see here, scrolling down here. On the 4K Ultra HD disc, the feature is presented in Dolby Vision HDR. On the Blu-ray, it is presented in high definition SDR. The original 5.1 surround soundtrack was remastered from the 2-inch 24-track magnetic track. Transfer supervisors Jane Campion and Stuart Dryburgh. And Stuart Dryburgh is the director of photography, of course. And so what we have here for those who opt for this 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition is you're getting this really exquisite presentation of this work, both in terms of sound and in terms of the visual presentation. Now, the Blu-ray is really quite superb in my view. And there are many colors of the look that are preserved. I mentioned, for instance, that in particular when we get to the earth tones of the work, for example, there's a lot that has to do with the way that sunlight and shadow intermix with each other. And so even in scenes of daylight, there are scenes of shadow and of the deep recesses, if you will, of what lies underneath, and also the way that there's a look of underwater feel. I think Jane Campion and Jan Chapin in the commentary track, for instance, make reference to this, the use of blues and greens as well. That's also meant to perhaps mimic or replicate a type of timely photographic technique that had the side effect, if you will, of creating a sense of blue or green shimmer or sheen to the particular photographed image, so or to the captured image in terms of the final product. And so I think these aspects and more, I think, are really captured very well in this particular presentation. We have the Blu-ray SDR presentation. I must say that the 4K UHD presentation really shines through here in terms of the vivid nature of these qualities and the nice contrast between those shadowed portions and also the daylighted portions. Indeed, shadow play is also something that's indicative in a certain part of this particular plot. And so I think it's captured very, very well. This is another example where of course, one does not need to avail oneself of the 4K UHD format if this is not to your particular needs as a consumer, as a customer, in terms of your own cinema journey. In other words, if you prefer one format over the other, that's fine. However, that being said, this 4K UHD presentation of this work is magnificent, and the Blu-ray is also magnificent, but the 4K UHD is really a sight to behold, and the sounds too, in terms of, say, the depths and the crashing waves and the music, of course, and the delicacy, as well as the epic nature and quality. It's all captured here. And so here's another great example of the 4K UHD format, brilliantly preserved and presented in terms of this Criterion Collection release. So I'm very impressed once again with this, as I have been so far with other past 4K UHD releases. I should say, of course, that in the past, I think for the most part, we did see 4K UHD release, Blu-ray combo pack releases from Criterion in terms of the Digipack casing. Here we don't have Digipack, at least as far as I'm concerned, in terms of this particular copy that I have. This is the plastic casing, and so you have two discs. One disc for the 4K UHD presentation and one disc for the Blu-ray and supplements. And so they're housed like so in this stacked format. On the left-hand side of the compartment will go the leaflet. I've just taken the liberty of removing it for purposes of today's discussion. But it might have been nice to have a Digipack format. I really like those Digipacks and the way the Criterion seems to be relying on the particular packaging, for the most part, for its combo releases. Not for all, but for the most part. So here we don't have that, but still that could be said to be a very minor thing. But I don't think that it should in any way detract or deter from anyone who might be interested in exploring this particular work in terms of this presentation or the format. It is really quite exquisite, and the colors and the energy and the atmosphere feel not only preserved but also really quite brilliantly portrayed. So the piano in this 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo or any other format that is made available through Criterion, hopefully that will suit whatever needs you have as a particular consumer and customer of Criterion. So with that, now let us turn to the supplements section, or for the most part, supplements and the commentary track. And indeed, this is a film where you can listen to the commentary track of this particular work, and it's a great one to have. The commentary track here is, here we go. It's described as being from 2006, and this is with Jane Campion and Jan Chapman. Jan Chapman is the producer, and also so therefore producer and also a collaborator, fellow member of the creative force behind this particular film, The Piano, with writer-director Jane Campion. And so we have the two of them here with this really wonderful, well thought out, well presented commentary track. And so please check it out if you can. There's so many details that the two of them touch upon, reminisce, provide anecdotal commentaries for, etc., and background information about the presentation and the production, etc. This is great, and I'm glad it was possible to have this included as part of this new release from Criterion. So the 2006 commentary track. So they speak, for instance, about the importance of Michael Nyman in terms of the music and the particular piano themes, and also how this is related to Ada, the character of Ada. And also this leads to the questions about why is it exactly that Ada is not speaking in this film. And so the two of them, Jan Chapman and Jane Campion, do hypothesize, or they perhaps provide interpretations as to the characterization of this really fascinating main character. And they also talk about the environment. Early on, we see waves, we see the beaches and the like. So, and I love this, a Gothic drama in a New Zealand landscape, to borrow a quote from the commentary track. And I think that is so well stated. Of course, they touch upon the importance of the Maori culture and how it's presented. They also touch upon the way in which these films, the films of Jane Campion, this film in particular, is portraying and also giving a type of essential, important quality to the nature of sexuality as it's being portrayed here in this particular film. They do speak about the performances from the great actors, Sam Neill and his character, how there is a real, almost naive, innocent quality to his characterization. So he is not in any way a type of a very, maybe he's not a type of quote maybe bland villain, as it were. On the contrary, very rich, very multi-dimensional, and quite a complex character. And in many ways, his approach to, say, relationships or indeed sexuality might be said to be one way that certain viewpoints towards, say, these types of relationships do spawn and develop among certain types of people. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. There might be a certain sense of shyness or awkwardness when it comes to trying to connect with others. And that is no way indicative of any kind of inherent villainy per se, but it is indeed that might be something that is inherent in his particular characterization. Of course, there are other aspects and layering to his character that might make him somewhat portrayed in maybe a positive or not so positive light, that's for sure. But in any event, there are aspects to his character that are suggested in the commentary track that I think shed some light into the complex nature of the psychology of that particular background. So that's really a well pointed out aspect. And also they speak about Anna Paquin and working with her and the real delicate, beautiful, and lively performance that she provides. And I think that they speak about that key relationship between Flora and Ada. And this is, of course, I think highlighted or supported, as they say, by the real close connection that the actors, Holly Hunter and Anna Paquin, did have. They really bonded, and they said that they really were fond of each other, and that really shone through. It shines through, let me say, in the present tense. It really shines through very, very wonderfully, and there's a type of wonderful, beautiful, innocent, precocious nature, and their dances and the way that she frolics in certain scenes on the beach elsewhere, and also this intimate nature of the very personalized sign language method of communication between the characters, and how this is also, I think, very much mirroring or paralleling just how close the performers really were and are when they were making the film. And this is, I think, indicated here as well. And then also they speak about Harvey Keitel and how they were, of course, Harvey Keitel comes off of a number of really powerful and remarkable performances throughout his filmography leading up to The Piano and indeed beyond. But they speak, for instance, about The Duelists, and also they speak around the time of this film. There was mention of a particular filmmaker and a particular film named Quentin Tarantino in Pulp Fiction. And also they speak about how Harvey Keitel really had placed so much importance during the rehearsal process and really provided a sense of, say, inspiration, at least from Jane Campion's perspective, that's for sure, and really showed a certain way and method and a real dedication and really a genuine intellectual curiosity as to the characterizations, not just in terms of Baines, but in terms of how he reacts. And that type of inquiry on his part really led to a lot of surprises in terms of finding the characters during the rehearsal process. They make mention of a great example, a very famous scene involving Baines and Ada and the playing of the piano, and one of the ways in which the characters might begin to approach each other on an intimate, indeed romantic level, and that initial contact, would it happen or won't it, that type of suspense in the air. And this was revealed or discovered during the process of finding the scene and finding the characters as they were practicing it. So this and other details, I think, come through really well. They do also speak, of course, working with Holly Hunter, about how Jane Campion, too, was considering how she first maybe envisioned the character of Ada, but then, of course, ultimately it was personified in the great, brilliant performance of Holly Hunter, and the idea of what it was that she was thinking of in certain key scenes. There are some key, very, very dramatic scenes here, and I don't want to go into too much detail lest I don't want to provide, I want to be as vague as possible in case you haven't seen the film yet. But Jane Campion and Jan Chapman do mention, for instance, what were some of the motivations behind the look or the reactions of, say, the Holly Hunter performance as certain very dramatic scenes were happening. And so it reveals a lot about the nature of the way Jane Campion works on the set and with the actors and performers, and so it's great. And also they do make mention of the fact that they make mention of the fact that they have this long friendship and working relationship with Holly Hunter, but that it was a really interesting process by which the production and crew were able to find Holly Hunter, and thus leading to the great cinematic history that is The Piano. So those are some aspects that are revealed in that commentary track. And then we have other aspects. Stuart Dryburgh's photography is very key, and the idea too of the way that blues and greens are applied. I like how they describe it here in the commentary. It needed to feel like it was almost like being underwater in some of the dry land scenes, still having that feeling of the underwater look of it. And that's really key too, because there are a number of dramatic plot-pointed scenes that do have significance in terms of the way that characters interact with water, specifically so. And so that type of lingering atmosphere, both on the land and also indeed on the rocky waves, as it were, I think is a real testament to the way in which The land, the earth, the elements are linked to the emotions and the intimacies and the heightened sense of passions and feelings that are on display with the characters. So everything is linked, and even subliminally, we have this link of blues and greens, and also the lights and the shadows, etc. And they also speak too about the way in which this film did find a type of international success, and also they spoke about the funding of this film, the finances, and how and the route towards what ended up becoming the great worldwide phenomenon that was and is the piano. They also speak too about the notions of femininity and masculinity, and of course they speak about that in terms of, say, the characters like Ada and the Holly Hunter performance, and how this is very much an embodiment of, or maybe a reaction to, or retaliation against certain societal conventions that are also displayed here, as well as the intimate relationships, both the clashes and the types of joinings, if you will, between and among the characters, with Holly Hunter's performance right in the center. And also in terms of what is described as a type of sensitive form of masculinity in, say, the example of Baines, the Harvey Keitel character. And also they speak about the way in which the piano lessons are part of the plot structure of the film, etc. They also speak very frankly about the depiction of human sexuality and love scenes in the film, and how sexuality is a very important and fundamental part of being human, and how this is therefore an extension of the human emotional flow of feelings of the characters, Ada and others. So this is a really important aspect, and I'm glad Jane Campion was able to voice this as well. And they also speak too about other influences, the way that there's a type of link between the exterior, or the visual, and the psychological, and that gives rise to a type of room for the commentary track, I think, where they cite Fellini. In terms of that type of wonderful inspiration for that interplay between the objective and subjective in cinema. And then also they do mention the idea of dreams versus reality, or dreams and reality. And this is played through both, again, in the visuals and the atmosphere, and also in specific plot points, the type of things about fantasies, and also about what is real and what is a type of visual treat, flourish, dreams, mythology, and the like, and how this is, there's a type of sense of will. And they also praise the actors in terms of their fearlessness, and also the idea of the unknown being both terrifying and also liberating at the same time. And this is all part of the great nature of this particular work. And so Jan Chapman and Jane Campion speak to this so well in this commentary track. So please check it out if you can. It's so worth it, and I'm so glad Criterion was able to include it here. This is the commentary track with Jane Campion and Jan Chapman. But that's not all, because then we get the supplements. And as with other 4K UHD and Blu-ray combos, the supplements can be then found accompanying the Blu-ray disc. And so you can go to the Blu-ray disc and then find these great supplements. And they are plentiful here, and so I'm very impressed with this. The first of such supplements, is a 2021 Criterion supplement. This is a one-on-one discussion between Jane Campion and Amy Taubin. This is approximately 26 minutes, where the two of them speak about the piano, about Jane Campion's interests and concerns when creating this masterwork, Wuthering Heights, and the importance of the Bronte sisters and literature comes to mind. Landscapes and anthropology is also referred to. The idea of relationships between mother and child, and how this might be in ways connected to, or mirroring, or otherwise reflective of maybe some kind of autobiographical connection, and some mentioning of Jane Campion's own family background is indeed referred to during this conversation. And also the idea of the role reversal, or the potential of role reversal, in terms of that mother-daughter relationship that we see here in the piano. It's a wonderful, enriching depiction of that particular dynamic. And then also we have the characterization of Ada herself, and then we have certain challenges and ordeals and some quite vicious and quite frightening, to the extent of, say, the scary, the type of scary nature of physical threat and mutilation, as well as the almost the wonderfully stubborn nature of the strength of will that is almost required or necessary when dealing with these particular challenges that these characters face. And so, the strategy to stay alive, that's how the two of them refer to it in the context of Ada's character. And also the idea of will of character, how this is also a reflection of romantic literature, as the two of them mention. They mention sex, they mention love, and how they are intertwined or connected so integrally. When we are speaking of that in the context of the characterizations here, and the idea of the relationship between Ada and Baines. There is this idea of description of Baines, animalistic with sensitivity, or animalistic urges with a sensitive side to it. And the idea too in the description of Baines, let's see, the idea too of a form or viewpoint of masculinity as being the means by which to identify the power of femininity to become somehow whole. And this is, I think, a really fascinating interpretation of Baines and his almost psychology or philosophy indeed, and how throughout the film it is almost his own journey, his quest, perhaps, maybe even unknown to him, until he is able to confront it or to recognize it. The idea, the quest, the journey to somehow find a sense of whole. And so this is also something that they link to in terms of Jane Campion's other work. Power of the Dog is then mentioned here. And then the idea of opposites attract, and leading to a discussion of Maori culture, etc., and the idea of civilization, and a fundamental nature, the essence of nature, and how this is also linked to the Gothic literature, Romantic literature tradition. And then they speak to of the great performances, Holly Hunter, of course, and Harvey Keitel, Anna Paquin, Sam Neill, and the idea of, say, Anna Paquin and Holly Hunter's relationship. They have these mannerisms that seem to have built up naturally over the course of their working relationship, and it really shines through in lovely moments. There's a moment where the two of them tilt their head to the side as they're looking upon one of the other characters, and so that is a great example. It's also used, I think, in terms of how Criterion edits this particular discussion together. So for these and other reasons, my friends, please check out this one-on-one discussion, again from 2021 with Jane Campion and Amy Taubin, approximately 26 minutes. It's so worth it. Please check it out. And then the supplements continue with Inside the Piano from 1993. This is approximately 18 minutes. And here we have at the time of the film's release, a type of behind-the-scenes look from Jane Campion, Holly Hunter, Harvey Keitel, Jan Chapman, and Sam Neill, speaking about the way this film is a type of journey experience or learning experience, the idea of the mystery or air of mystique, as it's described, especially in the context of descriptions of the character of Ada, costuming, and how costumes were also very important, and the example of the restrictive feeling nature of the corset that's worn, that had somehow some bearing on the characterization of the restricted nature of Ada, for instance, but how that maybe makes her strength of will all the stronger in terms of wanting a sense of freedom or liberation. And then there's an idea of her, of maybe it could be one way of describing the character's approach to their own feelings as having an innocent, an innocent, almost childlike nature to the way they are handling their own feelings, etc. And then also the piano, the relationship of the character vis-a-vis the piano, how this is such an important direct plot point and also metaphor and symbol. And then how it could be also said to be not just in line with Ada's characterization, but also in terms of the socio-political, the idea of civilization and communication and emotion. That's how it's described here. And then Sam Neill is also mentioned here, and I mentioned it earlier, how he is not just maybe a type of two-dimensional villain. He is a very multi-dimensional character that maybe has a sense of naivete or a sense of ignorance when it comes to how to handle his own feelings as well as the feelings of others. But that does not make him any less of a human character. Indeed, Sam Neill brings such a real, almost a real weight to the way that character is performed. And it's a really important characterization. So well done to Sam Neill here. And also Harvey Keitel in terms of his characterization of Baines, and the notion of facing up to one's fear is also expressed. And then a further discussion of the importance of sex, the importance of portrayal of eroticism and love in the context of the way that human beings relate to each other and communicate with each other. And my goodness, communication and the piano and the expression of human nature. I mean, there's all. I mean, sexuality is. This is what sexuality is, and so it's no wonder that it's such a fundamental part of this particular film, the piano, and it is really delicately and sensitively portrayed. So. And then also there's a discussion of the locations, the importance of the trees, how this is somehow evocative of a sense or feeling or intuition of a mythology that also is linked to the Gothic Romantic literary tradition. So this is another great one. So please check it out if you haven't already. Approximately 18 minutes. And that's not all, because then we have a 2018 program which is called The Piano, 25 years on, again, 2018. This is approximately 30 minutes. And this is once again with Jane Campion and Jan Chapman. And here they return to a key location in New Zealand. This is Kari Kari Beach. And so they return there, they return to the actual site, or they return very close by. They walk around the vicinity, they sit by and enjoy the scenery as they talk, the two of them. They reminisce, they catch up, they recall certain episodes or background details about the film, etc. There's a mention here. Emery Bronte saved my life. It's mentioned here. Really interesting. Again, there's a real sense of links, maybe in terms of atmosphere and feel and chill and romance with a work like Wuthering Heights, etc. So that is one very important link that's well mentioned here. And then the idea too about the real cold during the shoot on the beach, and they mention a particular photograph that was taken of location with a hot water bottle during the principal filming there. And then also they speak about the rehearsal process, how it was a real intimate nature to it, and the actors really gave it their all, they say, to the characters. And again, more discussion about Holly Hunter and her performance, and how there is a type of, how she's described by Jan Chapman and Jane Campion here almost as a type of creature. And I think they mean that in terms of the almost innate, maybe almost way in which, in a certain way that she acts in terms of her instincts, and those instincts are directly linked to the feelings of the heart, and they're of course expressed outwardly in the way that she interacts with, for example, the piano and music. So that is a really interesting way that the two of them describe that. And then they do speak about finding the financing for the film, and how it found a huge international audience and reception, the Cannes Film Festival, etc., and also Michael Nyman's importance, the type of piano that was decided upon, and how this was a lot to do with the input of Michael McAlpine. And so we have these and other details that emerge. So this is really, and also they mention Janet Patterson, and we'll talk about Janet Patterson a little bit like the costume designer when we talk about another supplement here. And this is also dedicated to the memory of Janet Patterson, who passed away, and so it's a kind of poignant dedication and memorial to their friend and fellow filmmaker and crew member and contributor to the world of the piano, etc. So please check this out if you can. It's a wonderful inclusion. I'm glad Criterion was also able to include this. The Piano, 25 years on, approximately 30 minutes. And that's not all, because the supplements then continue with a 2018 discussion. This is described as Filmstruck Extras, and this is a discussion between Holly Hunter and Alicia Malone, approximately 23 minutes. And here we have Holly Hunter and Alicia Malone speaking about Jane Campion and her body of work overall, and also in the context of, say, the working relationship between Holly Hunter and Jane Campion, as well as their takes on the work of Jane Campion, including, of course, the piano. And so they speak about other key works like Sweetie. They speak about works like An Angel at My Table. And there's a way in which there's a style, a look, an aesthetic, and a type of cinematic philosophy, as well as working philosophy. Holly Hunter describes the atmosphere on set to be very relaxed. There's a type of a way in which that yields a sense of a feeling of a natural or organic texture to these films, and I think that's really right. And the idea of the mysterious and the magical and the mystique of trees, and the idea of trees in a film like Sweetie as an example, also the piano as a great example, and the idea too of how how Holly Hunter had to really work to get the role of Ada in the piano, and how perhaps she might not have been Jane Campion's first choice, which is a very interesting background anecdote in and of itself. But ultimately, of course, Holly Hunter in the role is magnificent. It's one of the great performances, and Holly Hunter here does speak about the dialect, the dialect coach or the sign language, etc. I mean, it is a role that is almost completely without any type of speaking. Although there are some moments, of course, in terms of a type of application of narration, that's for sure. But she does speak about dialect coach. She also speaks about the sign language that was created together with Anna Paquin, of course, because that relationship is very key. And then they speak too about the piano as expression, as Holly Hunter puts it, and a sense of will. The word will is very, very key throughout the discussion of the piano. The sense of will, the strength of will. The will is so strong here, and that is so characteristic of this performance here. And of course, the idea too of the Academy Awards and the great Academy Awards attention that was given to this particular film during that year, Jane Campion and Holly Hunter and Anna Paquin. But then they do speak too about how they view the lack of attention that has been given to female directors from the Academy Awards over the years, and so they express hopes that hopefully that will change over time. And then, of course, they lead back into the idea of Jane Campion overall and her focus on the warmth and strength of human expression and emotion through expressions of sexuality and eroticism, and the idea of the wild and the tamed, the controlled and the free, the importance of locations in the context of the piano, a type of quote-unquote dysfunctional family unit in a manner of speaking, but also how this is very important in terms of experiences and stories. And that's what it's all about, is it not? So for these and other reasons, this is a great conversation. Alicia Malone and Holly Hunter. Please check it out if you can. And that's not all, because the supplements continue with a 2005 one-on-one interview or discussion with Michael Nyman. This is approximately 50 minutes, 50 minutes, so just shy of 1 hour. And it goes by so quickly because it is so great. Michael Nyman's comments here are so detailed and specific about his evolution and approach and introduction to the world of the piano and Jane Campion, and what it was that he was asked to bring to the table, as it were, from Jane Campion. And of course, he does mention his work with Greenaway, and how this is very notable and very much part of who he is as a musician, also as an artist. And but also at the same time, he recalls the anecdote or the recollection about how Jane Campion had asked him to give the film his own spirit, his own sense of uniqueness, but at the same time to not give it that kind of style that seems to be inherent, at least from her perspective, in his work with Peter Greenaway. And so that was an interesting challenge, as he describes it. And also, this led to his development of, or his approach and philosophy towards the music of this film, and how he was looking at it from a historical research perspective on the one hand, because he knew that, or he had to create a type of prequel or backstory, as he describes it, to the character of Ada. Because she plays the piano, and this is a very important part of the characterization. Also, he realizes, understands that the music is a form of expression, and thus it is a very key form of expressing on the part of this main character. And so he had to create and really develop music with this type of thinking in mind, that this is also in the world of the universe of the film a type of direct self-expression, but also he needed to layer it on to the soundtrack of the film in order to punctuate that and to further embellish or heighten that in the type of terms that are going to be connecting with the viewer themselves. So this is a really fascinating balancing act that he is describing. And so he also tries to give words, give voice, give expression to that of the main character of Ada. So this is also a really interesting approach that he has, and it is a reinforcement of the notion that music and the piano music is indeed another voice or form of expression on the part of this main character. So he talks about how he studied 19th century, the period, in terms of his musicology efforts for purposes of the research of this film. And also he talks too about Holly Hunter, and how Holly Hunter plays the piano. And he listened to Holly Hunter performance. And indeed, actually, I forgot to mention to you how Holly Hunter did refer to this in her discussion. And how this was an opportunity for her, and she does perform the pieces, and this was an opportunity for her to find yet another way in which she could express herself through this performance. And Michael Nyman does speak about how he heard Holly Hunter's playing, and he felt that in particular when she was playing some of the slow tempo works, that her expressiveness really shone through. And so I think he's tended to gravitate towards that, or at least that's how he describes it, in terms of the pieces that were created for purposes of the film, and creating the world and the universe and the feel of the film. This is, and he speaks about specific musical pieces, and also he speaks too about that wonderful interplay in terms of how he was creating music for the character of Ada, but also at the same time how the Holly Hunter performance of the music that he composed ended up also influencing him in terms of how he viewed the film, and how he indeed views the film and the music after the fact. And so it's a wonderful type of circular relationship that he describes in terms of how he created the art, or how he had a significant hand in the input in terms of the creation of the art, but also how it comes full circle, how the art influences him as well. And that's due in large part to the way that Ada was embodied and personified, and also how Holly Hunter expressed the music as well. So well done. This is a really really quite a brilliant way of describing it. And he does speak about certain examples from the work. He does also, he's very honest too about how he felt about not getting any recognition from the Academy Awards that particular year, but that he also recognizes too that the music of the film and the music of the film have indeed this long-lasting legacy. And so he does acknowledge that, and rightly so. So for these and other reasons, this one-on-one discussion with Michael Nyman is truly great. From 2005, approximately 50 minutes, 50. Please check it out. It is so wonderful. Please indeed check it out if you have the chance. And that's not all, because then we have a discussion with Stuart Dryber, who is the director of photography. It's called Shooting the Piano. This is from 2021, approximately 9 minutes. And here he's talking about his working relationship with Jane Campion, type of philosophy towards film, making the film as a unique individual cinematic form or expression. And he does talk about An Angel at My Table, and the notion of symbiosis of image making vis-a-vis his collaboration with Jane Campion. And this is great. He talks too about the importance of photos and paintings, conceptual drawings, storyboards. He also mentions a really lovely detail about the autochrome process, the Lumiere process. That is one of the byproducts of that is a type of a reflective sheen, and how that is maybe subliminally, and perhaps even not so subliminally, is very much a part of why he wanted, the philosophy of why he wanted to use, how he describes it, a type of blue filter. And so there is like blues and also emerald greens that are embellished and highlighted, and that also reminds us of the way in which Jen Chapman and Jane Campion in the commentary track describe the blues and greens, and how it had this look of feeling like it was underwater. And here Stuart Dryber has a similar type of discussion here, where he talks too about that and the connection with those colors and the visual scheme, and how even in the depths of the forest, even in the bright of day, there can be so much shadow and the like. And so this leads to this idea of how he was, in many ways, when you're in the outdoor shooting locations, at the mercy of the elements of nature. And so he speaks about that. He also speaks about the use of the camera Arriflex, and some. He describes how some scenes were really well rehearsed or highly rehearsed, and then others were quite improvised in terms of how the camera was placed, or how the camera had a certain improvisational free flow. And there is a particular scene that he mentions as an example of the latter. It's a very important one at that. And also there was the idea too of the expressions, or the lack of spoken words, but still how expressions were very important to some of the characters, obviously, and how that was akin, in his view, like a silent film. And so therefore the visuals become very, very apropos in trying to express that in visual means. So this is also yet another example of one of the other modes of communication that is reflected vis-a-vis the character of Ada, the Holly Hunter character. And then there's a great example he mentions about a particular scene and the teacup, the focusing in on a particular teacup, which is a lovely, lovely discussion. So for these and other reasons, my dear friends, the discussion with Stuart Dryber, please check it out if you can, approximately 9 minutes. And that's not all, because then we have production designer Andrew McAlpine on the piano. This is, again, from 2021. This one is a 12-minute discussion. And so here he speaks about many things. For instance, his background in terms of, or background and interest in terms of the skills of a production designer. There has to be an interest or a type of understanding of aspects of anthropology, engineering, architecture, etc. And so the importance on historical research and significance. This is very important. And so the idea too about how historical research also lends itself to an understanding of the fundamental aspects of the characters, and he does mention here that the historical backgrounds did give rise to a type of analysis of the characterizations. For instance, Sam Neill's character and Harvey Keitel's character, the idea of Harvey Keitel's character having the whaling background, and Sam Neill's character having the land ownership aspect to his particular family background, etc. Ownership is the relationship to the land, etc. Also the settlers and the landscape and the frontier, etc. And that leads to a discussion of the importance, the look of the mud. That's also described, and also the piano, the specific type of piano. This was also mentioned by Jane Campion about how she was envisioning one type of piano, but that how McAlpine provided a great a great historical example, period piece. So this is, I think, a lovely type of anecdote here from Andrew McAlpine about the period, the necessity for having period detail and accuracy, even when it comes to, or not even, but for example, when it comes to a key detail like the piano itself. And then also he speaks about a particular shape. There's a seahorse shape on the beach scene. And then also he speaks about a necklace, a particular necklace, the period details that are very important. So this is lovely. Andrew McAlpine's importance and the contributions to the look and feel, the period feel, the details, the fine detail aspect nature of it. It all shines through in this wonderful discussion. Once again, Andrew McAlpine on the piano, 12 minutes, approximately 12 minutes from 2021. Please check it out if you can. That's not all, because then we get an audio discussion from 2015. This is Janet Patterson, costume designer, talking to actor Adam Bowen. Again, this is audio only, but it's wonderful. 17 minutes, and this is oral history program at the National Film and Sound Archive of Australia. And she speaks about working with Jan Chapman and Jane Campion, and also the idea it's divided into various sections or excerpts. For example, difficult choice, found and lost, a shift in vision, being truthful, links in a chain, better not to be noticed, expressions of the character. And here she speaks about some of those great details about some of the challenges that she had with creating some of the costumes. And she does talk about a particular story about lost or almost lost parcel or shipments that could have affected their ability to produce the costumes that they needed, the period type costumes that they needed to produce, because of the materials that were included there. But she also speaks about the importance of team building. She speaks about the importance of things that are either stand out or maybe are subdued, but even the power of something that's being subdued still has a real poignant power to it. And I think a great example of this is the idea that was mentioned also by Holly Hunter, is how the costume also is, as part of it, the idea of the corset or the restriction. This is not always visible or seen per se, but it's still part of the overall feel or effect that is very significant indeed. So this is a really lovely discussion from Janet Patterson. And as we recall too, Janet Patterson did pass away in the recent years, and we also understand too that she was a very important, a close working. She was a close working partner with Jan Chapman and Jane Campion, as well as a close friend, and a very inspirational person to them in a lot of ways, especially, or in particular, or for example, in the way in which she seems to have inspired many aspects of the creation of the piano itself, so as well as her key contributions. So to have this type of interview with Janet Patterson is a really loving tribute to her contributions to this film and to cinema, and to her approach and philosophy to the world of costume designing and also the world of cinema overall. So a lovely tribute, and well done for being able to include this. Approximately 17 minutes. And that's not all, because then we have it's a one-on-one discussion, again, from 2021. This is 14 minutes, and this is with Wei-Horoi Shortland. And Wei-Horoi Shortland is, he's credited as being the Maori dialogue and one of the advisors when it comes to the portrayal of the Maori culture in this film. And as I say, it is a key component of this particular work. And so Wei-Horoi Shortland speaks about working with Jane Campion on the piano, working as an advisor in the context of presenting the culture and the language when it does appear in the film, and how the representation in cinema is indeed very important. He describes it too as Maori culture as being a backdrop to the story, and he does acknowledge how perhaps it's not the front and center of the film per se, and so but that's okay, as long as when it does appear, that he must, or he wanted to be sure in terms of his role as an advisor to the film and to Jane Campion. He wanted to be sure that it was accurate and it was truthful and it was also respectful. And indeed it is. Indeed, he does talk about the historical significance of the role of Maori people and culture during these, what he describes as the early years of colonization, and also the importance and significance in this history of the sovereignty of these people and the culture, and weaving the culture into the texture of the movie. That's how it's described. I think it's really lovely, and also how it's reflected too in a lot of the ways in which it's reflected in the spoken word and what is being referred to, and the way that it's enveloped, for example, in the interactions with nature and the atmosphere, what he describes as reflection of the unseen. I think it's a really powerful component. And he does talk too about working with some of the performers. He speaks about Harvey Keitel's performance as well, because the character does speak the language in a number of scenes, and so he speaks about the language lessons there, and the nature and significance of the tattoo aspect to this particular representation, etc. Then he speaks too about maybe whether or not there might be issues or controversies with regards to the potential problematic aspects of misappropriation, and he denies, or he feels that there is not any sense of misappropriation, at least when it comes to what he regards as depictions of Maori culture in the piano. He does mention too, however, that it wasn't as though it was free from questions. There was a particular moment that he mentions in the context of the film where he did question whether or not this was a fair representation of the culture, or whether it was a not so fair representation of the culture. And it was having to do with a reaction that a character had to a particular aspect of a play that's performed in the context of the film. And so was it something that made a particular Maori character, would it make that character look maybe dumb, or maybe totally not understanding a particular situation? So he did question that particular motivation, but then he understood how it fit into the context of the film, and so he describes now how he regards that particular moment that he describes, and he does see it. He sees it as a type of maybe authentic reaction of that particular person in that given moment, and so in that way he was able to accept it and to regard it and to work with it as far as his advisory duties are concerned. So this is one of the really great discussions from Criterion here, and it really adds a real breadth and scope and background to this particular aspect of the piano. Again, it might not be the front and center aspect of the film, but it's still undeniably of great significance and importance, and so it's great to get some details and specific commentary from Wehoroy Shortland about his work on the piano. So please check this out if you can. Approximately 14 minutes. And that's not all, because then we get a short film, and this is described as being from 2006. It is called The Water Diary. This is a short film from Jane Campion. It is approximately 17 minutes. And this is a very poignant, moving, in many ways startling and shocking work, having to do with the reaction and handling of a particular group of people, a family, in this situation of drought. And there's depictions and scenes of animals, of horses in particular, children, family, and their interactions with nature, the landscape, or the harshness of the landscape, and the way in which children perceive the world of adults, and also vice versa, how the adults perceive the world of children, and the maybe the truths or the lies or deceit that might occur in the context of that particular interaction between adults and children, etc. And so this is and it has a type of sense of representation of community, as well as an embedded environmental message as well. So this is a wonderful example, another example of the great output of Jane Campion, her concerns and interests as a filmmaker, and also how they might find a relation or balance or counterbalance or complement to a film like The Piano, where indeed there are similar types of themes, arguably, with respect to the relationships between adults and children, parents and children, the impact or context of nature and the landscape, and the beauty and the wonder, and also the unknown and the harshness of some of the truths that can emerge, and the lies that can emerge between human beings, as well as the harshness and the unknown and the wonder of nature itself. So this is another great example of Jane Campion's work. It is a great example on its own. It's also a great companion work. The Piano and The Water Diary form a great set of companion pieces. And so however you choose to view it, I think it's definitely worth checking out. So please check it out if you can. It is really wonderful. And then the supplements then conclude with a trailer for the film, so you can check out the wonderful trailer as well. So it's real packed in terms of the supplements, and highly packed indeed, dense, beautifully dense, with a lot of richness and detail. And so I know you're going to have a wonderful time exploring the supplements. So please check them out if you can. I'd like now to speak about the packaging and presentation. I just want to say too that I adore the artwork here. I love this particular capturing of what could be said to be maybe a key moment or shot in the film, but very clever in how it is adapted for purposes of this cover art. Well done, very, very clever. There's a detail, or a number of details here. They're so clever that, again, when you see the film, you'll know what I'm talking about. So I just want to say here, art director Sarah Habibi, Eric Skillman, illustration Greg Ruth. Very, very clever, well done. And I love how the illustrations are here. They are reminiscent of specific shots in the film, but also there's a little twist on them in a lot of the way in the mannerisms that are captured, details that are maybe adaptations or reversals or variations. Very, very clever. Well done indeed. This is a great artistic design all around. And then also, as I say, I've taken the liberty of taking out the leaflet. It is a fold out. I'm not a fan of the fold out. I wish they could, Criterion could do the staple booklets. But for what this is worth, it has a great essay. I did mention too the wonder of the illustrations, but also there's a great essay. Carmen Gray, Gothic Gone South. So this is. It has a really very clever way, an interesting way of introducing the essay, and it goes straight into a link between literature and inspiration and Jane Campion, and then goes straight to the heart of the film and the themes. So when you've seen the film, check out this essay, Gothic Gone South, another great one. And also too, I should mention the design or the packaging itself. This is not a digipack, as I might have mentioned elsewhere. Most, not all, but most, I understand, of the 4K UHD Blu-ray plus Blu-ray combos packs are released by Criterion under the digipack, which is the sort of the cardboard exterior with the interior casing. So this is not in that type of style or format. This is the plastic casing, as it were. And so when you open it up, as I say, you have the 2-disc compartment on the right-hand side, and then the left-hand side is where you can fit in the particular booklet. So it would have been really nice if this had been the digipack. I'm not too I don't think it's too much of a it's not a criticism, a major criticism, but as I say, it would have been nice to see what Criterion might have done with the digipack format. But that's okay, because as I say, you're still getting a wonderful illustration, and of course you're getting the discs which have the film itself. So that is the main attraction, as it were. It is always the main attraction of a release like this from Criterion, which is the piano. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so, what do you think? Are you enjoying this release of the piano? Do you enjoy the film? How do you feel? Please feel free to let me know in the comments section below. As always, I'd love to hear what it is you have to say. All right, my friends, so that's it for now. So thank you very much for your time. And until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. Thank you so much. As always, I very, very, very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.